The second snag we run into in the process of discipleship that points at a key for understanding where the strength for discipleship comes is this: we're weak. What I mean is that the doctrine of human sinfulness, the doctrine of human brokenness that is so essential to the gospel, has been overdone. Without this simple truth, the sinner's prayer of help never happens. It's crucial. However, as Bill Johnson said, I can be nothing without Jesus. But you know what? I'm not going to be without Jesus ever again. Things have changed forever. In the final words that Jesus says to his guys in Matthew 28, verses 19 to 20, we call it the Great Commission. He says this: "As you are going, make disciples of all nations. Baptize them into the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And teach them to obey all that I've commanded you. For I'll be with you always, even to the end of the age." What's amazing about that is that we consistently skip over that middle section. Teach them to obey all that I've commanded. The teachings of Jesus are not mere poetry. He meant for us to live them. In Matthew chapter 7, at the end of what we call the Sermon on the Mount, we see two things. We see a tree that gives birth to a certain kind of fruit, obedience. A good tree gives birth to good fruit. Bad tree gives birth to bad fruit. And we see a man who builds his house on the sand and a man who builds his house on the rocks. And the difference between those two men are that the man who builds his house on the sand is one that hears Jesus' words and doesn't put them into practice. And the one who builds his house on the rock is the one who hears the words of Jesus and puts them into practice. So everything he's taught in Matthew chapters 5 and 6 and the beginning of 7 about his kind of life is something that's meant to happen in our real lives. Jesus always meant for humans to be transformed so that fruit can flow through their lives, and fruit of action, fruit of obedience, fruit of deeds. And this is why he says, teach them to obey all that I've commanded, because that's essential to the kind of life he's called us to being disciples. But we, over and over again, in false humility or real humility or self-flagellation, we abandon this, and I couldn't possibly do that. And this modesty is getting in the way of what Jesus meant for us all along. He talks about how the early church had their worship services broken up into two sections. And the reason they did this is because people who were just new to the faith, who were new to wanting to explore this and desiring to be a part of it, could stay for the first half. But the second half were for those who were fully a part of this, who had been baptized and now were walking. And the elders felt comfortable that this is something that was really genuine for them. Now, to our ears, Western ears, that sounds really legalistic and controlling. But really, it's simply because they took the words of Jesus seriously. When Jesus comes into a life, it changes. The possibilities of living his kind of life become real for the first time. And what they want to do is take a person through the process of beginning to understand that this is really what it's about, and train them in some of this, and give them time for this to root in, before they're convinced that perhaps the other types of soil we found in Matthew 13 aren't in play in this situation. It seems to me strange, but also incredibly conscientious, and also taking Jesus' words really seriously. John 15 is a key verse for us here. He says, "You can do nothing without me." Why? Because I'm the vine, you're the branches. A branch withers and is good for nothing but firewood if it's not tapped into the vine. This is the intimate relationship that actualizes Christ in you, the hope of glory. And this relationship is fleshed out as we step out in the confidence that he is in us to give us what we need to do what he's called us to do what he's teaching us to live the kind of life he's teaching us to live. And that's why he says, this is what it means to abide in me. Obey my commands. Now, if you're still not convinced Just have a think. These 12 disciples, flunk outs, changed the world.